The woman nodded in response before sweeping her sleeves through the air, releasing two bursts of white light that vanished into the bodies of the two giants. A string of cracks and pops rang out from the giants' bodies, and they quickly shrank down to a pair of first-sized gray stone balls, both of which then instantly disappeared up the woman's sleeve. After that, a black cloud emerged beneath the woman's feet, then encompassed her body as she flew away toward a certain direction. Han Li's eyelids fluttered slightly as he sat beside the giant crater. He slowly opened his eyes, and a peculiar look appeared on his face. He had just withdrawn his spiritual sense clone from within the devil's sealing lock, and he murmured to himself, "From the looks of it, that chaotic yin-yang chi must be extremely important to both of the devils. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten into such a heated altercation. Will the two of them be able to escape from the devil's sealing lock right away after obtaining the chaotic yin-yang chi? No, surely not. The devil's sealing lock is an incomplete, profound heavenly treasure. No matter how incredible that chaotic yin-yang chi is, there's no way it could have such a miraculous effect. Those two are most likely plotting something else." After contemplating the issue for a while, Han Li seemed to have suddenly arrived at a decision. There's no need for me to overthink this. After I split the chaotic yin-yang chi with those two devils, I'll find a way to toss the devil's sealing lock back into the elder devil realm. I have to make a trip there anyway. I'll just drop off the devil's sealing lock then. Those two are nothing more than spiritual sense entities without physical bodies anyway. Who cares what'll become of them once they escape from the devil's sealing lock in the elder devil realm? With that in mind, Han Li pointed a finger toward the devil's sealing lock before him, and it shot forth directly toward the giant crater before hovering right over its center. Immediately thereafter, Han Li took a deep breath before making a hand seal while chanting something, and a projection with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared behind him. The projection made hand seals with all 6 of its arms, and a vast expanse of golden light swept forth from its body before vanishing into the devil's sealing lock. As a result, the surface of the white wooden box instantly took on a shimmering golden color, as if a coat of molten gold had been applied to it. Right at this moment, a layer of azure light appeared on Han Li's face, and he let loose a low cry before pointing a finger at the wooden box again. A burst of silver flames emerged from his fingertip before enveloping the wooden box, and at the same time, the golden projection behind Han Li opened all 6 of its eyes in unison. It then strode directly toward the burning wooden box, covering a distance of over 100 feet in just a few flashes, before reaching out to grab onto the box. After that, the projection carried the box and descended slowly toward the bottom of the giant crater. Even though it wasn't descending very quickly, it still disappeared into the yellow mist down below after the span of just a few breaths. Han Li continued to chant his incantation while making different hand seals, and a burst of indescribable glacial chi soon began to emanate from his body. A layer of faint yellow frost spread over the ground around him, and moments later, the azure light on Han Li's face faded while his entire body was enveloped by a layer of yellow light. At the same time, a layer of yellow frost also began to appear over his body, and at this point, the yellow mist within the crater was already churning violently. An occasional rumbling boom would ring out from underground, as if there were something constantly exploding within the depths of the crater. Han Li's expression remained unchanged, and he seemed to be paying no heed to the changes taking place on his body. He merely continued to do what he was doing without pause. Time slowly passed by, and 7 days and 7 nights had flown past. Han Li was still seated beside the giant crater. If a normal cultivator with inferior magic power, spiritual sense, and physical constitution had been in his place, they would have most likely already collapsed. Even for Han Li, this was quite a taxing endeavor, and he was beginning to feel rather weary. At this point, The rumbling booms echoing deep within the giant crater had already receded. The churning of the yellow mist had also become a lot less violent, and it was clear that the secret technique that he was unleashing was in its closing stages. All of a sudden, a loud boom that was akin to a rumbling thunderclap erupted from the bottom of the crater, and countless rays of golden light erupted upward, piercing through the layers of mist and completely illuminating the entire giant crater. Success! Han Li couldn't help but exclaim in an excited manner as his eyes lit up. If he could obtain this chaotic yin-yang qi, then he would definitely be able to progress to the late body integration stage in a short time. If he could reach that level, then both his magic power and abilities would be enhanced significantly, and he would be far better equipped to protect himself during the devilish tribulation, as well as the trip into the Elder Devil realm. With that in mind, he immediately sprang into action. A layer of 5 colored flames appeared over his body, and all of the yellow frost was melted away. He then raised a hand and made a grabbing motion toward the bottom of the crater, upon which the mist within surged violently, and the golden projection slowly re-emerged. It was still holding the wooden box, but there was now an azure ball of light contained within its body. The ball of light was around the size of an egg and completely mundane in appearance, but it contained 2 pea-sized specks of light, one of which was black while the other was white. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, but in the next instant, his smile abruptly stiffened, and he cast his gaze upward with an alarmed look in his eyes. Almost at the exact same moment, an earth-shattering boom erupted up above, following which a burst of devastating force struck the restrictions in the air. In the face of this ferocious attack, the restriction was instantly shattered, and the mist enshrouding the mountain summit was completely swept away by a gust of fierce wind. A slender female figure then appeared up above before casting her gaze toward Han Li in a cold manner. Her gaze was as frosty as ice, and Han Li's face was struck by a pang of sharp pain under her cold gaze. Looks like the information I obtained from searching that human cultivator's soul was accurate. The woman mused in a cold voice, and Han Li's heart jolted upon hearing this. He didn't know who this woman was, but judging from her aura, she was clearly a high-grade devilish being. Han Li was naturally very perplexed and alarmed, but there was no time for him to ponder the situation. He abruptly reached out with one hand before making a grabbing motion, and the golden projection transformed into a ball of golden light that hurtled directly toward Han Li with the wooden box, and that ball of azure light contained within it. The woman faltered slightly upon seeing this, but after she caught sight of the wooden box and the ball of azure light, her expression instantly changed drastically. That's the devil sealing lock and chaotic yin-yang qi. I see, so you were extracting chaotic yin-yang qi using the earthly hellish flames here. The woman immediately swept a sleeve through the air as she spoke, and a white piece of fabric instantly shot forth. After just a single flash, it covered a distance of several thousand feet, appearing directly above the golden projection before descending like lightning. This was a massive white silk handkerchief that was around 10 feet in size. Its surface was riddled with shimmering silver runes, and it was clearly a powerful treasure. The woman was attempting to use this treasure to intercept the devil sealing lock and chaotic yin-yang qi. Almost at the exact same moment, violent tremors ran through the ground on either side of the giant crater, and countless rocks and stones were sent flying in all directions as 2 massive gray stone hands erupted out of the ground. The 2 huge hands clamped viciously toward Han Li, and before they had even struck him, 2 bursts of immense invisible force had crashed down upon him. Han Li was naturally quite alarmed and enraged by this, but he didn't panic in the slightest. He harumphed coldly while making a hand seal, then uttered the word explode. The golden light that enveloped the wooden box and the chaotic yin-yang qi flashed violently, before exploding into a golden halo. The space in the wake of this golden halo warped and twisted, and the white silk handkerchief was forced to a momentary standstill. Taking advantage of this opportunity, a huge green hand suddenly appeared out of thin air before instantly catching the wooden box and azure ball of light. Immediately thereafter, the massive hand transformed into a green humanoid figure. It was none other than Han Li's spirit body. As soon as the spirit body appeared, it made a hand seal and vanished on the spot as a ball of green light. At the same time, golden light flashed from Han Li's body, and he began to swell drastically in size while sprouting thick golden fur. In the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a giant golden ape that was over 100 feet tall, and the tremendous force weighing down upon him was instantly completely nullified. As soon as Han Li completed his transformation, he let loose a thunderous roar and launched his fists viciously toward the oncoming giant stone palms. Two earth-shattering booms erupted, and Han Li gave a muffled groan as he was forced back several steps, while large sections of the two massive stone hands were reduced to rubble and shrapnel. Right at this moment, spatial fluctuations erupted behind Han Li, and the spirit body emerged while holding the wooden box and the ball of azure light before vanishing into Han Li's body. At the same time, Han Li let loose an enraged roar as he opened his mouth to expel a thick pillar of golden light directly toward the woman up above. As for Han Li himself, he transformed into a giant silver four-winged bird with silver arcs of lightning flashing all over its body. He spread his four wings and vanished into thin air as an azure and white thread of light. In the next instant, spatial fluctuations erupted several thousand feet away, and the thread of light re-emerged before instantly disappearing again. This woman clearly possessed unfathomable powers, and Han Li currently wasn't in his best condition, so he immediately chose to flee. In this four-winged Kun Peng form, he was too fast even for the three Zhu Guang clones to catch, so he was very confident in his ability to escape. The woman waved a hand through the air to release a streak of inky black sword chi, which vanquished the oncoming golden pillar of light with ease. However, during that brief delay, Han Li had already traveled so far into the distance that he was nothing more than a barely visible black dot on the horizon. "You think you can get away from me? How delusional!" A cold light flashed through the woman's eyes as she cast her gaze toward the fleeing black dot in the distance. She waved a hand downward, and the two stone giants completely emerged from the ground down below. As they flew up into the air, they converged to form a giant dazzling ball of gray light at the woman's behest. The woman then transformed into a ball of black chi before vanishing into the massive ball of light, and moments later, the dazzling light receded to reveal a stone hall that was several hundred feet tall. The hall was entirely gray in color with a dozen or so crude stone pillars, giving off a rather primitive sense of beauty and artistry. The woman stood at the center of the hall, then gently tapped a foot down onto it before commanding it to give chase. A layer of white spiritual light instantly appeared over the surface of the stone hall, and it shot forth like a shooting star in pursuit of Han Li. The stone hall appeared to be quite bulky and maladroit, but it covered a distance of around 1,000 feet after just a single flash, and it wasn't much slower than the four-winged Kun Peng that Han Li had transformed into. Han Li had also naturally discovered this, and he became even more reluctant to engage his pursuer in battle. The woman clearly wasn't an ordinary devilish lord, and he certainly wasn't willing to face her in his current lackluster condition. Furthermore, not only did the woman's aura strike him with a sense of extreme peril, it was also rather familiar to him. It would be very unwise for Han Li to engage her in battle before ascertaining her identity. Even though he was only slightly faster than his pursuer in his Kun Peng form, the gap between them would still constantly be widening, so he would eventually be able to completely shake her off. The woman had to be aware of this as well, so Han Li was rather perplexed about what her intentions were. However, he had no time to consider such matters at the moment. He was focused solely on fleeing the scene as quickly as he could. At their astonishing speeds, a distance of hundreds of thousands of kilometers had been covered after just a single hour. At this point, Han Li had already opened up a gap of several tens of kilometers between himself and the stone hall. This was naturally an extremely far distance for the average person, but for beings of Han Li's caliber, it was a distance that could be covered in mere moments. Even so, the gap was still steadily widening, and Han Li's heart finally eased slightly as he began to ponder exactly who this woman was. Meanwhile, the woman was seated on a stone chair at the center of the hall, casting her cold gaze straight ahead in an unblinking manner. HMPH, this human brat was nothing more than an ant in a lower realm the last time I encountered him, but since then, he's progressed to the mid-body integration stage in less than 2,000 years and attained such a powerful transformation technique. It appears that he's not to be underestimated. However, he's dreaming if he thinks he can get away from me with these trifling abilities alone. Shigan, initiate instantaneous teleportation right away. I'm sure you've had enough time to lock onto him, the woman commanded with a cold expression. In response, a giant rough face took shape on the ceiling of the stone hall, and it replied, "Yes, Mistress Yuan Cha. The two of us will initiate teleportation right away, but there's still a potential margin for error of around 500 meters that you'll need to account for." 500 meters is nothing. I'll be able to stop him for sure, the woman said in a nonchalant manner. Yes. The giant face immediately gave an affirmative reply, and in the next instant, the stone hall suddenly stopped in midair. Immediately thereafter, two different strange voices began to chant an incantation, and countless five-colored runes emerged over the surface of the stone hall amid a flash of spiritual light. These runes were extremely profound, and they flashed violently before detaching themselves from the stone hall, dispersing through the air to form a massive five-colored formation. The stone hall was situated right at the center of the formation, and it vanished on the spot after a flash of dazzling light. In the next instant, Han Li suddenly felt a burst of spatial fluctuations appear around 500 meters behind him, and his heart jolted as he turned around, just in time to see a giant formation appear out of thin air. Five-colored light flashed, and a massive object began to emerge from the formation. Grab! Han Li was adept in formations and instantaneous teleportation techniques himself, so he was naturally immediately able to identify this as a teleportation formation. As such, he immediately stopped in his flight while a vertical black demonic eye appeared on his glabella. This was none other than Han Li's Law Destruction Eye, and he was forcibly using it in his Kun Peng form. This was something that would have been completely beyond his capabilities back before he reached the body integration stage. As soon as the Law Destruction Eye appeared, it expelled a black thread that was as thin as a strand of hair. The black thread then instantly transformed into a thick, inky black pillar of light that vanished into thin air in a flash. A resounding boom rang out, and the black pillar of light appeared right in front of the teleportation formation, before striking it with devastating force. Black and five-colored light immediately intertwined to inundate the entire formation, and after unleashing the attack, the Law Destruction Eye on Han Li's glabella instantly vanished. Immediately thereafter, he flapped his wings and continued to flee, choosing to unleash no further attacks. Han Li was clearly aware that the attack from his Law Destruction Eye wouldn't actually be able to harm his pursuer, which was why he had made such a quick decision to continue flying away. As it turned out, he was right. After the explosion of black and five-colored light receded, The space at the center of the giant formation warped and blurred, following which the giant stone hall emerged in a slightly unsteady manner. Under the influence of the chaotic spatial powers in the nearby area, the stone hall was unable to immediately continue pursuing Han Li. Instead, a white light barrier had appeared around it, and it was swaying incessantly amid the violent spatial fluctuations. He has a law-destruction eye. The woman's expression darkened upon making this realization. After just a few flashes, Han Li was nothing more than a black spot on the horizon again. "Chase him down," the woman commanded in an enraged voice. The giant stone face appeared once again on the ceiling of the hall, and it said in an apologetic manner, "I'm afraid we won't be able to give chase right away, mistress. Due to the disruption from spatial powers, we'll only be able to continue after making some adjustments. HMPH, by the time you're done, that human brat will be completely gone. Let me lend you a hand." The woman harumphed coldly before gripping onto the smooth armrests of her stone chair, then injected a burst of inky black devilish chi into it. "Thank you for your assistance, Mistress Yuan Cha. We'll be able to continue right away now," the stone face said in an elated manner. Thus, not long after that, the stone hall shot forth through the air again. Even though the stone hall had failed to stop Han Li, the distance between the two had been closed down significantly, and the woman continued to give chase with renewed determination. Thus, whenever Han Li managed to widen the gap between himself and the stone hall, the woman would make use of its teleportation ability to close the gap. Having learned her lesson from the first teleportation, she made sure not to get too close to Han Li during her subsequent teleportations. Thus, even with his law-destruction eye, Han Li was unable to thwart her teleportation any further. This was naturally quite worrying for Han Li. He also had his lightning formation that he could use for teleportation, but he was unable to control the destination at all. If he were to only teleport over a short distance, there was a possibility that he could end up right next to his pursuer. If he wanted to teleport over a longer distance, then he would require more time to set up the formation, so that wasn't a viable option either. Furthermore, even if he could teleport himself thousands of kilometers away, he still wouldn't be able to escape the woman's spiritual sense detection, and she'd simply catch up again eventually. It seemed that she was even more difficult to shake off than the three clones of sacred ancestor Zhu Guang. Thus, the two continued to fly through the air for over half a day. Due to the fact that Han Li had intentionally chosen a very sparsely populated path, he didn't encounter any devilish beings that could impede him along the way. However, the woman clearly wasn't going to let him off the hook, so he had to think of a way to shake her off. Unbeknownst to him, the woman was currently communicating with another devilish being through her antiquated black mirror. The image in the mirror depicted a crimson-robed young man, and he had a rather dark expression on his face. "Yuan Cha, when did you send a clone into the spirit realm? If I recall correctly, you're not on the list of the sacred ancestors designated to descend into this realm." "Zhu Guang, I only sent a clone of mine into this realm to assist Liu Jai. I'm not ruling over any army, and I don't have any intention of getting my true body to descend into this realm, so I'm not breaking my agreement with everyone. As such, you have no right to accuse me of anything," the woman replied in an expressionless manner. Zhu Guang was furious, but he was clearly also rather wary of the woman, and he harumphed coldly. "HMPH, no matter how you try to explain it, you're just twisting the narrative. Setting that aside for now, if you're assisting Liu Jai, then why have you appeared in this area that I'm overseeing? Don't you owe me an explanation for that? Don't tell me that the detection treasure in my battle canoe is yielding a false result. I am indeed currently in the area that you're overseeing, and I'm pursuing a human cultivator. This is an order from Liu Jai as well, so what I'm doing is definitely beneficial to the army of our holy race." The woman replied as her expression eased slightly. You're pursuing a human cultivator. With those two giant stone devils up your sleeve, surely no human under the grand ascension stage can escape from you. However, seeing as this is a matter that concerns the entire army of our holy race, it would be unbefitting of me to not lend you my assistance. I'll send out a clone of mine to meet up with you right away, Zhu Guang said in a meaningful voice. It sounds like you still doubt me. By the way, I've heard that you sent your 3 clones into the spirit realm. Aren't you afraid that something will happen to your true body in our holy realm? Besides, don't you think it's too late for you to send out a clone now? By the time your clone gets here, I'll have already taken care of the human cultivator here, the woman said as a cold smile appeared on her face. I have no need to explain myself to you. My clone isn't far away from where you are right now. It should be able to meet up with you in about half a day. I just so happen to have borrowed the all-encompassing plate from Du Long. I'm sure it'll be of assistance to you, Zhu Guang replied. What? How did you get Du Long to lend you his all-encompassing plate? He values that treasure as much as his own life. A stunned look appeared on the woman's face upon hearing this. Anything can be borrowed as long as the price is right. Who's this human cultivator that you're currently pursuing? They must be an extremely important figure in the human race to get away from you. I'll contact my clones right away so they can ambush him from the front, and we'll trap him from both sides, Zhu Guang proposed. The woman was silent for a moment before replying in a serious manner. You can help me hunt him down, but I've had a run-in with him in a lower realm in the past, so after we capture him, you have to leave him to me. Otherwise, I'd rather take care of him on my own, even if it means I'll have to expend a bit more time. Oh, he's crossed you in a lower realm. That's quite interesting. I heard that a spiritual sense clone of yours was killed in a lower realm. Could the perpetrator be the human cultivator that you're currently pursuing? Haha, what a coincidence. Zhu Guang chuckled as a mocking look appeared on his face. If you contacted me just to mock me, then there's no need for us to communicate any further. The woman's expression darkened as she raised a hand to cut off the communication. However, Zhu Guang suddenly raised a hand to stop her. Hold on, I agree to your condition. However, after this, you have to help me do something as well, and after that's done, you have to leave the area that I'm overseeing. What do you need help with? The woman was rather surprised to hear this. It's quite simple. I also need you to help me take care of a human cultivator, Zhu Guang immediately replied. Didn't your 3 clones descend into this realm already? Why do you still need my assistance? You're not trying to recruit this clone of mine to attack a grand ascension stage human cultivator, are you? The woman asked with furrowed brows. Rest assured, I wouldn't be willing to sacrifice these clones of mine to attack a grand ascension stage being. The human I'm targeting is a body integration cultivator, but he possesses many powerful treasures and abilities. I did indeed send my 3 clones into this realm, but they're not carrying my most powerful treasures, which is why I was unable to take that human down. With your assistance, I'm sure the outcome will be different, Zhu Guang replied with a smile. The woman's expression eased upon hearing this, and she said, if it's a body integration stage human cultivator, then I have no objections. You have yourself a deal. Tell me how to contact those clones of yours. Zhu Guang naturally gave an affirmative reply before pointing a finger forward to release a string of silver runes out of the mirror. Meanwhile, Han Li was still hurtling through the air up ahead, completely oblivious to the fact that his 2 almighty devilish enemies had unknowingly joined forces to hunt him down. He was racking his brains for a way out of this situation as he flew, but was unable to think of anything right away. Not long ago, he had just faced sacred ancestor Zhu Guang's clones, and he had expended most of his temporary formation treasures, so he was lacking the resources to keep his pursuer at bay. Furthermore, he had no idea what type of abilities the devilish woman possessed, and that made it very difficult for him to formulate a plan against her. After thinking for a long while, he decided that he had to ascertain the woman's powers and abilities first before he could think about anything else. After all, only by knowing one's enemy could one assure victory. With that in mind, countless feathers suddenly shot forth from his Kun-Peng body before transforming into talismans and formation tools. He set up a dozen or so traps of different sizes, then continued on his way. A short while later, a string of loud explosions erupted behind him, and the spiritual sense connection he had with those traps was instantly severed. His heart immediately sank upon seeing this. Judging from the speed at which the woman had broken through all of the traps he had set, he could ascertain that she was even more powerful than he had anticipated. Her powers were definitely far superior to those of the average devilish lord, and she was comparable to the 3 Zhu Guang clones. Furthermore, the familiar aura that she was giving off reminded him of a fearsome enemy, and the mere thought of her sent chills running down his spine. Could it be that this woman was a clone of that sacred ancestor Yuan Cha? In that case, it wasn't all that strange that she was so determined to hunt him down. Indeed, after some careful consideration, Han Li finally realized that the aura of this woman was rather similar to that of the soul fragment of sacred ancestor Yuan Cha that he had encountered, and that was quite an uneasy thought for him. After arriving at this realization, he was even more determined to refrain from engaging the woman in battle, and continued to flee as quickly as he could. He had already formulated a plan. The stone hall could teleport, but that would undoubtedly expend far more magic power than normal flight. As such, there was a very good chance that he would be able to outlast her in a contest of endurance. Thus, he had made up his mind to keep fleeing, even though flying at such a rapid speed was also quite taxing to him. After that, he no longer tried to set up any traps or formations. He merely summoned some pills and top-grade spirit stones that he used to replenish his lost magic power. The stone hall continued to give chase behind him, and half a day flew by in the blink of an eye. They had flown over a desert in the primordial world and arrived in the air above a swamp. The sky was very clear, and there was nothing obstructing Han Li's field of view aside from a few lazy white clouds. Han Li could sense that the frequency of the stone hall's teleportation was gradually beginning to drop off, and a hint of elation welled up in his heart. Right at this moment, a slightly feeble voice suddenly sounded in his spiritual sense. "Look out, Master. I can sense the aura of an enemy up ahead." The voice was very tender and seemed to belong to a child. Han Li was very startled by this voice. He immediately stopped in midair before hurriedly asking, "Who's there?" "Do you not recognize me, Master? I'm the leopard Kirin beast. I only just awakened and will need to go into hibernation again soon, but I can clearly sense that there are enemies up ahead who bear ill will toward you," the owner of the childish voice said in an urgent manner, then fell silent after a tender yawn. Han Li was quite bewildered to hear this. The leopard Kirin beast had been hibernating for several centuries, yet it had suddenly woken up at a time like this to issue those words of caution to him. Furthermore, the fact that it was now able to speak also came as quite a surprise to him. What was the enemy that the beast had just mentioned? Why hadn't he been able to sense anything? As these thoughts rapidly flashed through Han Li's mind, he quickly cast his gaze through the surrounding area while releasing his enormous spiritual sense in all directions. However, he couldn't sense anything suspicious nearby, and a hesitant look appeared on his face. Meanwhile, there were 3 crimson-robed figures standing side by side within a mysterious treasure, appraising a giant hovering crystalline screen together. On the surface of the massive screen was the image of a giant bird, with silver arcs of lightning revolving all around its body. The massive bird had 2 pairs of wings, and was appraising its surroundings with a suspicious and bewildered look in its eyes. Who would have thought that this would be the human cultivator that Yuan Cha is pursuing? He, that makes things a lot easier for me. The crimson figure standing in the middle chuckled coldly with barely repressed rage in his voice. The crimson figure was none other than one of the sacred ancestor Zhu Guang's clones. Don't celebrate too early. Don't forget the condition that we initially proposed to Yuan Cha, another identical clone reminded in a calm voice. HMPH, seeing as Yuan Cha is pursuing the same target as us, the condition we raised will naturally have to be changed. We can hand that man over to her, but we didn't promise to hand over his treasures to her as well, sacred ancestor Zhu Guang harumphed coldly in response. I'm not sure Yuan Cha would be willing to accept such an arrangement. We can split her some of the treasures, but we have to recover the devil's sealing lock and purple word cauldron, the clone said with a shake of his head. Split her some of the treasures. That human brat clearly possesses many powerful treasures. Are you willing to pass them up? Sacred ancestor Zhu Guang asked with pursed lips. We have no choice. Don't forget that she has the backing of Liu Jai. Now would not be a good time to mess with her, the clone replied in a solemn manner. Indeed, that Liu Jai is quite a big problem. A hint of wariness appeared on sacred ancestor Zhu Guang's face. All right, stop getting ahead of yourselves. We might not even be able to capture that human brat. He seems to have sensed our presence, so it most likely won't be possible to ambush him, the final clone said. He sensed our presence. Surely not. We've already concealed everything with the all-encompassing plate. There's no way that he'll be able to sense us unless he's a grand ascension cultivator. At the very most, he's only become suspicious that there's someone nearby. With Yuan Cha hot on his heels, he won't be able to remain here for long, sacred ancestor Zhu Guang said in an unconvinced manner. Is that so? I don't think that's. Hold on, what is he doing? The final clone faltered mid-sentence before letting loose a cry of alarm. The expressions on the faces of the other two clones also changed drastically upon seeing what Han Li was doing in the image. Han Li suddenly opened his massive beak to expel a shimmering golden ball of lightning, which swelled to around 10 feet in size in a flash. The ball of lightning then shot forth, directly toward the three clones as a dazzling bolt of lightning. A loud thunderclap rang out, and the crystalline screen was pulverized into powder amid a crisp crack by the golden lightning. He really did discover the all-encompassing plate. If we can't ambush him, then we'll just have to forcibly stop him, sacred ancestor Zhu Guang said in a cold voice. The other two clones naturally offered no objections, and both of them began to make hand seals while uttering incantations. At the same time, the ball of lightning transformed into a giant net that swept forward, and a white object appeared out of thin air. This was a circular object that was over 1,000 feet in size, and it resembled a massive jade plate. Under the illumination of the white light emanating from the jade plate, a formation that was around 500 meters in size also emerged. If Han Li hadn't stopped right as he did, he would have plunged headfirst into that restriction, and that was naturally quite an alarming realization for him. The giant jade plate revolved on the spot, then released a dense white light barrier. After just a few flashes, the light barrier transformed into a wall of light with no end in sight to completely cut off Han Li. However, a burst of exuberant light suddenly flashed from Han Li's body, and he transformed into another giant bird form that resembled the legendary true spirit heavenly phoenix. This was none other than the heavenly phoenix transformation of Han Li's 12 awakening transformations. As soon as this bird emerged, it let loose a clear cry before flapping its wings, and spatial fluctuations erupted up ahead, following which a white spatial rift emerged. Han Li's giant bird body flashed forward, and he instantly vanished into the rift. In the next instant, an identical rift appeared beyond the white light barrier, and Han Li re-emerged in a wraith-like manner before immediately adopting his Kun Peng form again. He flapped his four wings, and a resounding thunderclap rang out as he disappeared on the spot. Several thousand feet away, another thunderclap rang out, and Han Li reappeared before continuing to fly away as an azure and white thread of light. This process sounded like quite a lengthy and convoluted one, but it had actually only taken an instant, and before the three clones knew it, Han Li was fleeing into the distance again. The three clones were naturally completely flabbergasted upon seeing this. That's impossible. How was he able to teleport away so easily in the face of the restriction from the all-encompassing plate? Could it be that he's carrying some type of treasure that can counter the all-encompassing plate? One of the clones roared in a furious manner. No, it was because of his transformation. Don't forget that the all-encompassing plate is unable to restrict spirit birds with innate spatial abilities such as phoenixes. What that brat just unleashed was clearly some type of heavenly phoenix transformation technique. Sacred Ancestor Zhu Guang analyzed in a calm voice. Just how many transformations does this brat have? Even with Yuan Cha's assistance, it won't be an easy task to capture him, the final clone said with a dark expression. Right at this moment, white light flashed from the distance, and a majestic stone hall appeared before hurtling directly toward the three clones. Let's set all that aside and give chase first, Sacred Ancestor Zhu Guang said without any hesitation. Indeed, we can't let him get away again, otherwise we may not get a chance to capture him again. The other two clones also nodded in agreement. Thus, crimson light flashed from their bodies, and they instantly combined as one, before injecting their power into the giant jade plate in a frenzy. A faint buzzing sound rang out from the jade plate, and runes swirled over its surface before it shot forth as a ball of white light. Close to 10 kilometers away, Yuan Cha was appraising everything that was unfolding while seated in her stone chair with a dark expression. What useless idiots! I can't believe those three clones couldn't stop that hand brat even after setting up an ambush. It appears I'll have to do everything myself, Yuan Chua grumbled to herself. Meanwhile, Han Li was also internally lamenting his current situation. Even though the enemies within the jade plate hadn't revealed themselves, he was able to identify who they were from the faint crimson light that had appeared when the treasure had been activated. Now that he was being pursued by two sacred ancestors at once, Han Li had naturally completely cast aside all thoughts of turning around and facing his pursuers in battle, and was focused wholeheartedly on fleeing. 2 days later, Han Li found himself surrounded by several tens of mid-grade devilish beings. These devilish beings were expelling devilish chi out of their mouths and swinging their weapons through the air, unleashing barrages of attacks toward Han Li with all their might. However, Han Li merely released a layer of golden lightning arcs out of his body, and all of the devilish beings were reduced to dust amid a resounding thunderclap. After that, he immediately continued on his way, not daring to delay even for an instant. A short while later, the jade plate and stone hall also rapidly passed through this place. 5 days later, over 100 devilish beings and over 1,000 low-grade devilish beasts appeared before Han Li. On this occasion, Han Li plunged headfirst into the horde of beasts, and streaks of azure sword chi erupted out of his body in a frenzy. All of the low-grade devilish beasts and devilish beings were instantly destroyed, while Han Li continued to flee rapidly into the distance. At this point, the jade plate and stone hall were already close to 1,000 kilometers away. 10 days later, in the air above a murky gray mountain range, a giant golden ape that was over 1,000 feet tall rushed into an army comprised of hundreds of elite devilish beings and a dozen or so giant devilish beasts. The giant ape swung its massive arms violently through the air, and none of the devilish beings or giant devilish beasts were able to withstand even a single attack. However, they seemed to have received some kind of strict order. Even though their numbers were quickly dwindling, they were still throwing themselves at the giant ape with no regard for their own lives. A buzzing sound rang out from another direction, and two balls of white light emerged almost in unison before hurtling toward the battlefield. The giant golden ape let loose a roar of fury before unleashing a burst of golden sound waves that made the nearby space twist and warp violently. In the blink of an eye, all of the devilish beings swept up by the golden sound waves self-detonated on the spot, following which the giant ape transformed into a four-winged kun peng again before flying away. Half a month later, Han Li had reverted back to his human form, and he was situated on the lakebed of an unknown lake, appraising the two devilish lords before him with a grim expression. One of the devilish lords had an inky black head, webbed hands, and several thick tentacles beneath its armpits that were waving incessantly. As for the other devilish lord, it had a pair of eyes that were as bright as lamps and a layer of shimmering azure scales all over its body. Han Li took a deep breath before making a grabbing motion with both hands, summoning an azure and a black mountain before sending both of them hurtling directly toward the two devilish lords. In the air above the lake close to 10,000 kilometers away, the jade plate and stone hall were hurtling toward Han Li's location one after the other. 2 months later, the four-winged kun peng was being harassed by a dozen or so shimmering crimson devilish beings above a peculiar steaming swamp. Regardless of whether the giant kun peng unleashed bolts of silver lightning or lashed out with its talons, the crimson devilish beings were able to instantly regenerate before pouncing toward the giant bird again. High up in the air around 1,000 kilometers away, the jade plate and stone hall reappeared. Han Li could naturally sense that his pursuers were closing in once again, and he immediately released countless golden flowers from his giant bird body. Each flower was around the size of a bowl, and they each contained a shimmering golden beetle. These were none other than the mature gold-devouring beetles that Han Li had kept in reserve, and he had released several thousand of them at once. Even with their instantaneous regenerative abilities, the crimson devilish beings were still completely devoured by the gold-devouring beetles within the span of just a few breaths, leaving behind no trace of their existence. Han Li let loose a long cry, and all of the beetles flew back toward him. Immediately thereafter, he flapped his four wings and vanished on the spot as a silver arc of lightning. After a few more rumbling thunderclaps, the silver arc of lightning flashed a few times before completely vanishing into the distance. Around 10 minutes later, the jade plate and stone hall both arrived on the scene before stopping in midair. A humanoid figure then emerged above each treasure. One of them was a slender and elegant woman, while the other was a crimson-robed young man. They were none other than the clones of Yuan Cha and Zhu Guang. Yuan Cha was completely expressionless, but the fury in her eyes was plain to see, while Zhu Guang wore an expression of unbridled rage. I didn't think that even my bloodlight crystal guards wouldn't be able to stall him at all. It looks like he's intent on dragging out this chase. Zhu Guang spat through gritted teeth. HMPH, aren't those guards of yours supposed to be indestructible? How were they killed by those mere spirit insects? Yuan Cha harumphed coldly in response. Don't tell me you didn't identify what those spirit insects were. My guards have indeed cultivated the blood-buddy devilish art, but there's no way they could withstand the power of those spirit insects, Zhu Guang snapped. Of course I was able to identify those spirit insects. Perhaps I would be wary of them if there were over 100,000 of those gold-devouring beetles, but such a trifling number won't be anywhere near enough to pose a threat to you and me. We can just trap them using a wood or stone attribute treasure, Yuan Cha said in an indifferent manner. I do indeed have a pair of treasures of those attributes, but can you be certain that he only has that many of those spirit insects? What if he has more than 100,000 of them up his sleeve? On top of that, we still don't know how many trump cards he's yet to reveal. What if we back him into a corner and he lashes out to deal us severe damage before we take him down? Zhu Guang speculated. You think he has over 10,000 gold-devouring beetles? You sure have a vivid imagination. All right, let's say that he does indeed have that many gold-devouring beetles up his sleeve. Do you think his spiritual sense will be powerful enough to control them? Even if our true bodies were present, controlling over 100,000 gold-devouring beetles would instantly exhaust our spiritual sense. Rest assured. Controlling several thousand of those beetles at once is most likely already his limit. If he really could control so many of those beetles at once, he would have used them against us already. He does indeed possess some powerful abilities that we need to be wary of, but don't tell me that you're planning to give up now. If so, then I'll just have to continue on my own. You just have to deploy your subordinates to cut off all of the potential routes he can take to return to any major human settlements. Yuan Cha chuckled coldly. Sacred Ancestor Zhu Guang's expression changed slightly before he replied. I was only considering the worst-case scenario. Seeing as you're so confident, I'll naturally be willing to continue as well. Han Li had taken two extremely important treasures from him, so he naturally wasn't willing to give up on this chase. As you know, I'm the leader of our Holy Race army in this area, but I can't deploy all of the troops here to hunt down that human brat. Otherwise, if something were to go wrong, I would be held accountable, Zhu Guang suddenly said. So, what are you trying to say? Spit it out, Yuan Cha urged in an impatient manner. What I'm saying is that seeing as we're unable to capture this human cultivator in a short time, you and I have to make some long-term plans. Why don't you request some reinforcements from Liu Jai? If she can deploy some of her elite subordinates to assist us, there's no way that human brat will be able to get away. With your relationship with Liu Jai, I'm sure this won't be too difficult, Zhu Guang chuckled. Yuan Cha considered this proposal for a moment before nodding in agreement. Request reinforcements from Liu Jai. That's not a bad idea. All right, I can do that, but during this time, you and your subordinates have to keep up the pressure on that Han brat. Don't allow him any respite, and certainly don't let him get away. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Yuan Cha, I'll be sure to cut off all of the potential routes leading to Deep Heaven City and the other major human settlements. I'll ensure that he'll have no one to turn to, Zhu Guang assured in an ecstatic manner. That would be best. Prior to the arrival of Liu Jai's reinforcements, we should continue to follow him from a distance. Once we completely exhaust him, we'll be able to capture him with ease, Yuan Cha said in a cold voice. Of course. In reality, with our powers, if we were prepared to incur some costs, we would have most likely already chased him down, Zhu Guang said with a smile. All right, let's continue then. I have to admit that his speed truly is quite remarkable. If we delay here any longer, he'll escape out of our sensory range, Yuan Cha said as she cast her gaze into the distance. Of course. I've already set up 7 more groups of my subordinates up ahead, and they should be able to exhaust him even further, Zhu Guang replied with a cold smile. Yuan Cha offered no response to this, and merely returned to her stone hall as a ball of white light. As for Zhu Guang, he made a hand seal and vanished into the jade plate as a cloud of black qi. In the next instant, both of the giant treasures set off in pursuit of Han Li once again. Meanwhile, Han Li was around 10,000 kilometers away, flying through the air with a dark expression. Having been fleeing for the past 2 months, the plans of the 2 sacred ancestors had naturally been made very apparent to him. During this period of time, he had encountered at least 30 to 40 groups of enemies. Some of these groups were comprised only of low-grade devilish beings, while others included the most elite forces the devilish army had to offer, and there were even two groups that had devilish lords among their ranks. Under normal circumstances, this naturally wouldn't be of any concern to him, but with the two sacred ancestors hot on his heels, he didn't dare to engage in prolonged battles. As such, he was forced to unleash powerful abilities to eradicate his enemies as quickly as possible, but doing so was naturally very taxing on his magic power and spiritual sense. If it weren't for the fact that he had many regenerative pills up his sleeve, he would have already collapsed. Even so, he was still in terrible condition. Following the intense battles that he had endured, his magic power reserves had been whittled down to less than half, and after being forced to release all those mature gold-devouring beetles, his spiritual sense had also been severely depleted. The only silver lining on this situation was that the two sacred ancestors seemed to have been intimidated by the powers he had displayed, and they only dared to deploy their troops to try and stall him. As such, he didn't have to worry about being attacked by the two sacred ancestors for now, but he clearly couldn't keep this up for much longer. If they were to discover that he was virtually a spent force, or if they were to deploy a large number of devilish beings to surround him, then he would be as good as dead. Han Li naturally wasn't going to wait for something like this to happen. He had employed all types of methods to try and shake off his pursuers, but the two sacred ancestors were just as if not more adept than he was in tracking and concealment abilities. He had tried a wide variety of tactics, but at the very most, he had only been able to shake off the two sacred ancestors for less than half a day before they caught up again. Thus, Han Li was in a very dire situation. If there were only a single sacred ancestor pursuing him, then perhaps he could slip away by taking advantage of a moment of complacency or a lapse in concentration from his pursuer. However, with two of them complementing one another, there was no way he would be able to depend on something like that. As he approached Deep Heaven City, the number of enemies that he encountered was clearly beginning to increase. He couldn't allow this to continue any longer. His pursuers were clearly taking advantage of his intention to return to Deep Heaven City, and had most likely set up a vast devilish army to stop him along the way. If he were to forge ahead blindly, then he'd run out of magic power and be killed before he could reach Deep Heaven City. He had to escape toward another direction. There were definitely going to be devilish beings attempting to impede him in other directions as well, but the resistance he encountered would most likely be significantly diminished. However, he couldn't make his intentions too obvious. He had to somehow shake off his pursuers for now and give himself an opening for some respite. Having made up his mind, Han Li immediately began to think of a plan. Perhaps the dire nature of the situation bestowed upon Han Li a greater sense of urgency, but he was quickly able to think of a plan. Within the jade plate, the three Zhu Guang clones were standing in front of a new crystalline wall in a stationary manner. Two of the clones had already closed their eyes, seemingly to rest, while the third was staring intently at the image on the wall. All of a sudden, a faint cry of surprise escaped from the third clone's mouth, and the other two clones immediately opened their eyes. The image on the crystalline wall depicted Han Li in his Kun Peng form, and he suddenly reverted back into human form, then stopped before making a hand seal. His body blurred slightly, and he manifested 8 identical figures to himself.